By the end of this video, we will have uncovered a scamming empire generating an estimated $5 million biannually, more than 70 identical trading sites, and the legitimate company facilitating this massive scam. But first, this story begins with a follow request. Early on a Friday morning, I get a follow request from an account I don't quite recognize, which, while not unusual, sparked my interest because the account ended in FX, the hallmark of a finance scammer. Naturally, the game was afoot. Immediately, I messaged Nicole, hoping to waste her time with hours of pointless discussion, and initially she bites. But after laying it on a little too thick about wanting a Lambo, she proceeds to ghost me like at least half of my Tinder dates. Now, this is where the story should have ended. But with my ego bruised, I decided to search for one more victim. And that's when I happened across this account, a perfect target. Eager to capitalize on the second opportunity, I proceed more cautiously, resisting the urge to laugh at the phrase, "the market is favorable at this moment," a feat made even more difficult by the fact that we're at the beginning of what many believe to be a recession. Clearly, the scammer has done zero research into anything remotely finance related. Again, the perfect target. But I needed to further gain his trust, and so I said nothing about the promised returns being inconsistent, astronomical, or 100% risk-free to lull him into a false sense of security. Feeling confident he had me eating out of the palm of his hand, he redirected me to the site he uses to scam people. If his Instagram page is a red flag, this website is a parade. The most significant errors being the average investment listed at $11 million. Okay, no problem. But with 37 million users, that's 5 times the entire planet's GDP. Quick maths! Secondly, they claim to be registered as Bitcoin Mine Limited, which is hilarious because they forgot that and referred to themselves as Shield Investors Limited on the website. And lastly, even though I deposited exactly $0, my return was listed at 40%. It was becoming more and more clear that I wasn't dealing with a mastermind, and instead I had to start asking myself who had had their time wasted, me or the scammer. And initially, this was almost the full scope of the video, with the full segment dedicated to trolling the scammer, including but not limited to gaslighting him into almost apologizing, watching him attempt to undercut his employer by getting me to send a direct bank transfer, and funniest of all, getting him to call me, warning that his site was a scam and that I should only trust him. All for him to ultimately block me in frustration.
Sometimes you're gonna lose your phone while paying through the website, so I just rather prefer when you pay through the bank details I've sent you.
Oh, so if I pay through the website, sometimes I lose the funds?
Yeah.
But instead, I stumbled onto IQINVESTMENTOPTIONS.com. See, researching for this video, a post on the subreddit scams caught my attention. Long story short, our protagonist got scammed out of $300, and the part that caught my interest was the fact that the scammers asked for $1,200 to release his initial $300. While I don't think I'm easily impressed, you have to at least be a little in awe of the audacity of these scammers. So, with my interest now peaked and my confidence soaring sky high from embarrassing this first scammer, I thought I'd make an account on IQ Investment Options and mess with the support team. This was the true first step in unraveling this massive web of scams. I went ahead and created an account on the site, and after browsing a bit, noticed that they accepted Bitcoin, meaning I could check the address's activity on the blockchain, and what I found blew my mind. Deposits into the account have totaled $67,000. That can't be right. $67,000? That's very anticlimactic, because while $67,000 is a lot of money, I expected so much more. But that's when I noticed something else. The account was empty, which meant the money was going somewhere. And lo and behold, almost every week, once a week, the wallet would deposit money into a larger address. And how much has been transferred into this larger address? $700 million. $700 million. My first thought was Googling how to be a scammer, but as I did more research, I realized that this wallet is probably the first in a Bitcoin mixer. Bitcoin mixing is essentially money laundering, but for the blockchain. Your Bitcoin goes into the mixer along with Bitcoin from other users and is moved around so much that the transaction thread becomes impossible to follow. Then I did even more research and I discovered that no, it probably wasn't Bitcoin mixing, it was probably an exchange's address based on the address's activity. What this essentially means is that the scammers don't even bother hiding their tracks. That's how brazen they are in the fraud that they're committing. So if $700 million isn't a good estimation of the amount the scammers have received, we can use another method. Going back to the Reddit post, the original poster notes that there are other identical websites with the same physical address for the business. And when he says identical, he means identical. Because for most of these sites, the only difference is the domain name. If we were to extrapolate the earnings of this one website to the 75 others that the original poster discovered, that means the scammers have raked in more than $5 million in Bitcoin alone. And that's important because they also accept card and wire transfers as well, meaning this is likely only a fraction of the true earnings. And that, my friends, isn't even the worst of it, because doing further research on the owner of the IQINVESTMENTOPTIONS domain, I found out that the website was only launched in January this year, meaning $67,000 in Bitcoin alone from a single site in only 6 months. Now, the whole time I've been researching, I couldn't get one thought out of my mind. Who was behind this? Of course, I never found out, but what I did find out from looking at the domain registration was that the company they registered it through is Namecheap Incorporated. For the unaware, Namecheap is a company that registers domains, and their registrations account for domains of over 25% of British scams. You may be wondering, why is this the case? Why do scammers choose to use Namecheap instead of something like GoDaddy? Well, that's simple, because registrants can anonymously purchase domains with Bitcoin, meaning scammers aren't required to associate any real information to the site. This means that sites can continue to propagate to the point of having 75 identical sites, all due to the profit motive of one slimy company. And so our story ends, a journey from a follow request to unearthing the unreal profitability of these scams. Finger guns.